county, and I drive the main road, searching in the sun for another overload. I hear you singing in the wire, I can hear you through the whine, and the Wichita lineman is still on the line. I know I need a small vacation, but it don't look like rain. And if it snows, that stretch down south won't ever stand the strain. And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. And the Wichita lineman is still on the line. I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. And the Wichita lineman is still on the line. Still on the all right, Galveston.
Oh, sorry about that. Thanks for telling me, Bobbity. So I was just telling you there's a couple of channel updates before I get into the topics for today. You do have, let me get rid of this. Cool. So you have, this is a little Doors song that you might like. So Joe Biden does The Doors, but you're going to have to guess which song, or you might just click on the link and see which song it is. Also, the first link that I tweeted out, that I shared here, was a tweet that I put out. I'm not normally a big fan of Twitter, but sometimes you don't have a choice because some people continue to prefer using it. So the issue today is that I met Brandon Tatum today. If you don't know who Brandon Tatum is, he's one of the people who's active in Turning Points USA. And even though I don't work with any organization, and certainly there's a few questions I have about Turning Points. I met him over there. He had an event, and I went to listen to it. Came about halfway in at my alma mater, and he had a very great interaction with the crowd. And really, I wasn't there to talk much about the issues of criminal justice and the black community and things like that, because I think there were other people there that had more questions about that, more personal experience, things like that. I didn't really have any personal feeling either way that going into there. Freighter Watcher says, I thought it was going to be the Bold McCarthy channel all doors cover band. The funny thing is, Freighter Watcher, I did see your comment on that video earlier. I didn't even know that Lennon McCarthy was going to do a cover of a Doors song. Well, he did a parody cover. I just used a cover version of the song and transposed cuts of Biden on, with these weird touching clips and stuff like that, and still photos and memes of his. So he didn't know I was doing it either. It just happens to be, maybe he is the real Jim Morrison, and Jim Morrison didn't really die. But yeah, you're going to have to watch that video. So please do, and please share it, and please retweet the first tweet that I put out there. I'm going to put it in the chat again. Let me see. Maybe somebody already did that. Yeah, here we go. So, 1 second. So those are a couple housekeeping items. I did post 2 smaller excerpt videos from basically. Damn it! What the fuck is going on here? So I posted 2 excerpt videos of the talk with Brandon Tatum. But the reason that I put that tweet out with Brandon Tatum mentioned in it is that I gave him a copy of the story that I wrote last year. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of my personal discovery of the Mattis connection to Rachel Maddow, of manipulation by the media, of this Russian hoax in order to shame voters, in order to cast aspersions on people. And I don't care if they're people who voted for Bernie Sanders. Those people have a right to be respected for making a choice and not be defamed as agents of a foreign power. And I've talked to them several times, the people that were defamed in all of the articles and the TV spots and all of that. I don't care if they don't agree with me on any issue. Okay, as long as they didn't do something personally against me or commit crimes that harm other people, I think that they deserve the proper respect of all Americans. And that's why I continue to fight to expose what MSNBC did by putting their names literally on the screen. What you see happening with organizations like TYT, which, by the way, there's closer relations between TYT and John Mattis, the hoax journalist, than I previously thought. So that is something I'm going to be developing sometime later. Have to find time. There's not enough time today. Do you guys notice that? Are you guys feeling more pressured in your day-to-day lives? Feel like there's less time for you to, kick back and relax and watch a movie? Because I haven't seen a movie probably in months. And it's really exhausting doing this. And that's why I do need the support of viewers like you. And I'm glad that more of you are starting to join. Bobbity, for example, has watched the Hard Bastard stream, and I hope he knows which story I'm talking about. There was a journalist in the San Diego area that essentially insinuated himself within the Bernie Sanders 2016 campaign, and later he started to claim that his group had been basically infiltrated by Russian bots, had been, Russian bots that wanted to torpedo the Hillary Clinton candidacy. Well, it turns out that this guy, nothing he said was true. He was not an administrator of the Facebook group he was talking about. Not that that even matters, because if he had been, he would have been able to just keep out all of these so-called bots. He could just denied them the request to join, things like that. And then he started to really drift into, the Twilight Zone and claim that, Russia had launched a coordinated effort to steal the votes of Bernie Sanders voters by defaming Hillary Clinton. And it turned out that essentially he admitted on video in a taped phone conversation with my friend Adrian Lloyd, who also known as Just My Stupid Opinion. It turned out that he had been in daily contact with an organization tied to David Brock of American Bridge 21st Century. So I gave that information today to Brandon Tatum. I gave him a print copy of one of my articles, the second article, which documents all of the nonsense articles that TYT's Ryan Grimm wrote for Huffington Post. All of the other articles that featured John Mattis's information, as well as all of the video spots that he'd been on with Rachel Maddow. And then I also sent him by email 2 of the interviews that I'd had with Josephine and Jim, as well as I think one with Joanne. Those are 3 of the witnesses. 2 of them had been delegates to the 2016 Democratic National Convention. So that's why you need to retweet what I just put out. This tweet over here, okay? The one that I tweeted before Bobbity's second to last comment. Just do it. Just retweet it. In the words of Madeline Kahn, I'm tired. I still can't believe how many people, they connect over that one movie. But yeah, I need you guys to help me out with that, because it is the most important thing I've worked on since I started YouTubing and doing blogging and kind of what I would call guerrilla journalism, startup journalism, whatever you want to call it. You don't have to make it something noble, but it has to mean something in order for you to keep doing it. Otherwise, why would you give a fuck? I mean, I don't think you guys care if you're doing something that doesn't have meaning day to day. At some point, you give it up, and I don't want that to happen. So I need you guys to retweet it and share it wherever you can, so Brandon knows to follow up on this, because obviously people are busy, and I think that he would probably be a good resource to talk to these people and get the story out before it gets buried in all the other Russiagate nonsense. So, Joe Biden was trolled to death by Donald Trump, and people are saying, well, this doesn't really mean anything because Donald Trump himself was accused several times of sexual harassment. He also admitted on the bus, said something about how he grabs women by the pussy and stuff like that. That is not important, okay? The point of the matter is this. He went and took this meme. I think his son Donald Jr. also used this meme. And Trump retweeted it again. And everybody's watching it, and it's just gold. It's comedy gold.
I shake hands, I hug people, I grab men and women by the shoulders and say, you can do this. And whether they're women, men, young, old, it's the way I've always been. It's the way I try to show I care about them and I'm listening.
Yeah, so that was pretty awesome, and I think that people are going to say this, and they already have. That's not very presidential of you to retweet that. The whole point is, how can you call Trump not presidential when Joe Biden is doing all these non-presidential things that are kind of, they're inappropriate. I don't think you should put your hands on people all over their face and shoulders and neck in public especially if you're an elected official. But in general, I don't think it's like a good pattern of behavior. Now, maybe I don't go and socialize enough, but I don't see it happening. I will say, in other cultures, it's a little more common for people to have like physical displays of affection. I remember living in Israel. There were a lot of girls who, even if you had never gone out with them, if you the totally platonic relationship, they expected you to kiss them on both sides of the cheek if if they would if they said hi to you. That is the way that it is in some parts, and that's some of the people over there. You can't assume though. You can't assume that people are okay with you just physically touching them though if you're a stranger. It's ridiculous. And I think Joe Biden would be a waste of a candidacy for the Democrats. There are a few people, and these aren't people I would probably vote for, but there are a few people that are in the race that seem to be, people with good, good grasps for how they want to change the world. Okay, Andrew Yang. Some people will laugh. It's ridiculous. UBI, things like that. Look, I mean, he's running with a concept, and the concept is a controversial one, and I personally don't think it'll work. But he's not running out there and talking about, fat shaming and high cheekbones and all the other crap that some of these other candidates are talking about. Andrew Yang is a real candidate. Tulsi Gabbard is a real candidate. Mike Gravel is a real candidate. But their poll numbers are not real substantial, so it's not going to help. It's a real problem that you have people like Joe Biden that are thinking of entering the race that will suck the oxygen out of the room. Because there's people who deserve an alternative candidacy. I don't think people should have to say, well, I guess there's only one choice. There's Donald Trump in 2020. That might very well happen. But you should at least let people have the option of something different if they don't like him. And something different, meaning not like a default worst case scenario option, which is exactly what Joe Biden is. So I think that if he enters the race, it kind of makes it much more worthless. It still, however, would probably lead to an assembly at the convention where not enough delegates have been claimed or pledged to one candidate in order to guarantee the nomination. I think that really has a good chance of happening because there's more and more candidates declaring all the time, and in many of these states the proportional representation is going to break it down pretty bad, and eventually these candidates are going to have to form alliances in order to elect or nominate the person that they want. That's what could happen at the convention very easily. Not gonna lie, I'm a little beat today, but some other issues. Okay, this is something that happened in Atlanta at Emory University. It says Emory University prides itself on free and open expression, but some students say flyers made to mimic eviction letters took that freedom too far. Several students woke up Tuesday morning to find what happened to be what appear to be eviction notices on their doors in dorms and on apartments near campus. It was just havoc, said Emory law student Madison Bader. People were panicking. People thought that people had their home addresses and they were scared for their safety, she continued. The problem is that many of the students receiving the letters are Jewish. I just couldn't believe that there was targeting of Jewish students, said Emory law student Jay Giroux. Every student who received one that I was made aware of was Jewish. The fact that only Jewish students seem to have received these letters is a pretty big coincidence that suggests targeting and anti-Semitism. The group behind the flyers is called Emory Students for Justice in Palestine. The flyer highlights that Palestinians are threatened daily with conflict and homelessness. Some of the students held a small protest on campus chanting, "Stop the aggression, stop the crimes, Israel out of Palestine." CBS 46 reached out to the student group via the Facebook page they list on the flyer, but the students declined to do an interview with CBS 46 when CBS 46 mentioned that other students are upset by the flyers. The student group SJP told CBS 46 it would release a statement in the coming days. Then it goes on to say, a lot of people felt targeted. No, and people are already asking if it's another self-inflicted hate crime. And D.I. Frater on the previous topic is asking, then they activate superdelegates and coerce a candidate to abdicate their votes. Exactly. That's precisely what's going to happen. So, Babidi, this is probably not a self-inflicted hate crime, and I'll explain the reason for that. This has happened at other universities in the country with the group Students for Justice in Palestine. And the reason that they tend to do this is that, and maybe if I expand this, they kind of go into what they think is the logic behind it. The Palestinian groups, the Palestinian activist groups in the U.S., they talk about home demolitions and evictions in the West Bank, and they have this narrative that they push that people are randomly forced out of their homes in order to, give their homes over to Jews or something. But that's not the way it works. So in some cases, you'll have a property is purchased in East Jerusalem. It's specifically in East Jerusalem. It's the most prevalent. And that property is usually has to be purchased in secret, because the person selling it, if he's a Palestinian Arab, he probably will not be able to stay in the same area, because it's technically illegal in the Palestinian Authority to sell property to Jews. Okay, I can even bring it up. Here. So here's an example. This is from Deutsche Welle, which is a German source. They said a U.S. Palestinian jailed for life over selling land to Jews. A Palestinian court has sentenced a U.S. Palestinian to life. So this is a U.S. citizen of Palestinian descent. Okay, so he was sentenced to life in prison with hard labor for attempting to sell his East Jerusalem property to Israelis. The U.S. has demanded his immediate release. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, why should the Palestinians tolerate this? Remember, okay, now I'm not like this massive supporter of Netanyahu or something, but when you get down to it, it's still private sale of one property between a private owner to another private owner. Let's see here, good lingerie. I don't know what he means. Create fear and anger within Jewish communities and people who support Jewish communities. I'm not sure what you mean either. So that's what this is talking about. So sometimes you'll have a landowner will sell a property and he won't even tell the tenants. And yeah, that's obviously a skeevy thing to do. But why would you tell your tenants when you could probably be thrown in prison by the Palestinian Authority for selling your property to the wrong person, because that person happens to be Jewish? And that is, if you really think about it at the root, prohibiting the sale of a property to a person based on religion is discrimination. I don't care what person, what persuasion you are, if you're a liberal, if you're a conservative, if you're a communist, if you're prohibiting the sale of a property from one person to another because the one person belongs to a different religion or race or whatever, yeah, that's discrimination. That's illegal discrimination. So that's really the reason that they do this. They are protesting, namely against the eviction of Palestinian residents of homes. So this could be one example where a Palestinian landowner, will sell his house or her house, but really, usually it's his house. So sells the house to a Jewish person, and the tenants end up getting evicted. Okay, so that's one example. Another example is that often if a Palestinian is, he commits an act that causes, mass casualties, a terror act against a number of Israelis, the Israelis will raise the home of his family. Okay, now yes, that's not exactly, something that's in keeping with the Western values of justice. Where, I mean, typically you don't see people whose families get punished. In addition to them getting punished for a crime, their families get punished. Why is it that the Israelis do it? Because typically, if somebody succeeds at a terror attack, they blow up, for example, a bus stop. They kill five, six people at a bus stop. The families will hand out candies, and they end up getting stipends from the government over in the Palestinian Authority because they get, I guess, compensated for the loss of their son. And these people are typically like given kind of an honor by the surrounding community and the government. So therefore, the Israelis decided years and years ago that in order to, discourage this incentive, they would destroy the homes of the family of the person who committed this act. So that is why, those are two reasons, and there could be more, why Students for Justice in Palestine takes these eviction notices and puts it on people's homes. Now, I'll explain to you, I mean, some of you probably know me from not just this channel, but from Hard Bastards channel and stuff like that. And in order to really, both be a viewer and contributor to the channel, because I do write articles for him and I've been on his show a few times, I do have to kind of turn the other cheek at certain unkind remarks that are thrown the way of the Jews. Okay, that's something that I just have to live with, and it's something that I've had to live with for a long time. Now, I don't normally level the charge of anti-Jewish hatred at somebody, but the reason that this is anti-Jewish, okay, and anti-Semitic, as people typically say, but the reason it is anti-Jewish is because usually what the people who protest against Israel will say is that not all Jews are Zionists, and Zionism is not Judaism, and therefore they're anti-Zionist and they're not anti-Semitic. What was done in this case, listen very closely, is that these students, essentially, they're not exercising freedom of speech. You can't take a sticker, and go and put it around the neighborhood on other people's property. Even if you put it on a light pole, I think you can get, in some cities, you can get fined for it. But certainly if you put it, let's say you start putting bumper stickers on people's cars, they can basically file charges against you for vandalism. So when you put eviction notices on people's residential home, that's already harassment. Okay, whatever the motive is, whatever the cause that's behind it, it's already harassment, because you're not actually evicting them. You're just putting something that is attacking them on their home. Okay, that's really the difference here. Then you have the factor that they're how did they find these houses? Well, in every Jewish house that is at least to some degree observant, religiously observant, they'll put something called a mezuzah. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, this was, if you follow the story of Passover and the Exodus from Egypt, this is what it looks like. This is the name of God, Shakai. Okay, so you put it on your door, and people can see that your home is a Jewish home. So they went and they found the homes that had these on them, or I guess the dorm rooms, and they put the eviction notices on it. So what you're defining the people that you're putting these eviction notices on their doors for has nothing to do with their political beliefs. It has nothing to do with Zionism. It has nothing to do with Israel, even according to your own definition, because you can be a Zionist and be completely secular and an atheist or something, or belong to a different religion, belong to Christianity. There's a lot of Christian Zionists. This would be literal anti-Semitism. You can't beat around the bush about it, because the criteria for vandalizing these people's houses had nothing to do with their professed political beliefs. Yes, some of them could have been obviously Zionist. Obviously, they could have been pro-Israel. I'm not denying that. But we're talking about, how did they find these people? They didn't find them by seeing whether they were demonstrating in favor of Israel, or whether they had Israeli citizenship, or whether they had Israeli flags in their houses. This is a religious symbol. It is not a political symbol, and that makes this harassment, whoever did it. And if the Students for Justice in Palestine was to be implicated in it, I am sure they'd probably be violating a number of the, first of all, criminal statutes, because no matter whether you're on campus or not, you're not allowed to just vandalize somebody's door to their to their place of residence. And second of all, probably a few campus rules where you're not supposed to discriminate against somebody based on their race, sex, creed, or sexual orientation. So that's as far as that is. And yeah, I think that this type of thing is more common than you would think on college campuses. It's just that a lot of the people who are the targets of this, they don't have the they just don't have the organization or the real will and motivation to fight back against it. And that's why, in reality, I don't think this is going anywhere soon, and we're probably going to see some more incidents of this. That's not the worst thing in the world. It's not as if these people were literally assaulted and beaten, but it's still something that I think about. I think it's kind of, it's part of the whole new culture of progressive harassment on campuses. These groups are typically very progressive. Let me see here. Something, Ocasio-Cortez is like trolling these Border Patrol agents. It's pretty funny. Or no, she was trolling this Fox News reporter. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. He says, does live from the border mean Party City? Fox is really out here doing the most on a budget to make the border look more dangerous than it is. Yeah, she's an idiot. Okay? And she really does. That's a problem that maybe people should try to solve. But she's more interested in trying to get people to believe the world's going to end in 12 years. That's your congressman for you, Congresswoman Cortez. Yeah, the last thing I want to talk about is Tim Ryan. So Tim Ryan is a congressman from the Mahoning Valley, which is close to where I work. And Mahoning Valley is kind of steel country. There's a few steel mills over there. There's Youngstown is the main city over there. And he is running for president, and he's going to be probably the most centrist, the most pro-union candidate that there is. But I think the real reason that he chose to throw his hat in the ring today was because it's looking increasingly like, as we said earlier, Joe Biden is having a lot of trouble. I think Joe Biden could see his potential campaign collapse in the coming week, because something has to give. He's just become the butt of so many jokes. And I still couldn't believe yesterday that Clay Travis said, well, he would be the most logical choice. Well, yeah, if you don't know anything about him, I guess he would be the most logical choice. But yeah, let's watch this.
Another Democrat has jumped into the crowded field of 2020 presidential candidates. Ohio Congressman Tim Ryan announced his run moments ago in a video posted online.
Politics divides us. We need to get to purpose. We are a family in the United States of America. We've got to find some common ground so we can get to some higher ground.
There's a quiet revolution happening in the country. We put our shoulder into it. It's going to happen.
My name is Tim Ryan, and I'm running for President of the United States.
For more on this, we're joined by CBSN political contributor and Democratic strategist Linda Tran in Washington. She's a partner at the progressive digital firm 270 Strategies. 270 Strategies. Linda, I'm just going to tell our audience it's a little loud here today in the CBS This Morning newsroom, so I apologize to our viewers if they hear a lot of noise, but let's get into this story here. Congressman Ryan is now the 17th Democrat to join the 2020 race. What more can you tell us about him?
Well, as you could see from that video, Tim Ryan hails from a part of Ohio that when people think about the American heartland, that's exactly what they're thinking about. He's a congressman who has served since 2002 when he replaced his former boss, Jim Traficant. And he's actually known outside of Ohio for challenging Nancy Pelosi back in 2016 for leadership of the Democrats before Democrats took the majority in the House. So he's not somebody who necessarily falls in line. He represents a part of the country that has very specific interests, a place where the industry has kind of lagged over the last couple of decades, and certainly a place where people think a lot about the economy, a lot about jobs, and the traditional issues that you've heard from the presidential campaign trail over the past. Also worth noting that Youngstown, Ohio in particular, is in Mahoning Valley. This is a place that got a lot of attention after 2016 because it was a place where voters swung hard from Barack Obama, whom they voted for with a 22% margin over his opponent, to 6% for Donald Trump. So it was a massive, massive swing of just about 28 points there.
You know, Linda, one major issue already at the forefront of this race is health care. A handful of Democratic candidates say they support a Medicare for all plan. Do we know where he stands on that?
He's been very vocal. Tim Ryan has proudly tweeted on social media that he's part of the Medicare for All caucus. He was a co-sponsor of the bill that Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal introduced not very long ago on Medicare for All. And he has been touting the legislation as a way to strengthen the economy, as a way to expand jobs, which, again, is really in line with the interests of his constituents in that part of the country.
Sorry, I keep forgetting to turn the sound back on. We didn't miss much. Anyway, the Youngstown Vindicator is the main paper down there, and I went and looked at it, and there was this poll that was asking how excited are you for, Tim Ryan to run for Congress, and it was like 64%. When I voted, I think it was like 61%. Now it's 64% say they don't care. I think you can vote as many times as you want, though. Let me see here. Yeah, I just voted again. So yeah, this is a bullshit poll, but in any case, a lot of people are simply, they don't care at all, and some people are unsure. And then there's 15% of people in the Youngstown area say they're excited, very excited, and 10.5% say that they're optimistic or something. So I personally think that Tim Ryan doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting through that crowded field, because ultimately, when it comes to some of the Midwest is important, okay? But the area where Bernie Sanders failed to really break through in 2016, and that's the area that a lot of politicians are really coveting, is not the Midwest. The Midwest is important. It's not as important as the South, because there's a lot of very heavy delegate-rich states over there, and one of them, I guess the one that a lot of people always watch in both the Republican and Democratic primaries is South Carolina. And whoever wins South Carolina, I think, will have an inside track on a lot of these other southern states. And the reason that South Carolina is important, and a lot of these other states are important. The southern states, I'd say Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia especially, is because they have a lot of black voters, and those voters can be the difference. Okay, those guys often hold the balance, and it's something that is a reality. And the Midwest is, I think, a little. It's more secondary. It's kind of, I guess, the second most important block of states to capture. So, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Indiana, Minnesota, Wisconsin, those are very important. And Bernie Sanders did win a few of those, even though the polls predicted that Hillary Clinton would win, I believe, in both Wisconsin and Michigan. No, Bernie Sanders won both of those races, and those are races where Tim Ryan could succeed, but he's not going to succeed. First of all, I think Bernie Sanders would still be a little more popular in most of those states than he is. Okay, and especially in Michigan, I would say he's probably going to easily win Michigan. Bernie Sanders will. So no, I don't think that he has a very good chance. I think in normal times, if the country was in a better state of collective mood, Tim Ryan could be a good candidate. I don't think he's a bad politician. I don't think he's a particularly effective politician because there's not much that he's gotten through the House or through as I guess a full bill, one that's passed the House and the Senate. So yeah, I think that's all for all of the topics that I had today. There is this interesting thing that I saw while listening to Tim Ryan. Okay, I'll bring the Twitter back here. So it says, Chicago police officials just had a press conference where they called on special or State's Attorney Kim Foxx to resign. They say her incompetence goes way beyond Smollett's case. They accuse her office of reducing charges of too many criminals and letting them go free. So let's see this.
We're very grateful for the top police officials who are here with one united voice to demand the resignation of Cook County State's Attorney Kimberly Foxx. We have taken a vote both in the Police Chiefs Associations and with the FOP of a vote of no confidence in Kimberly Foxx. This is not just about a Jussie Smollett case, which undermined the public confidence and law enforcement faith in Cook County criminal justice system. Her interference in this case has led to some very troubling comments, both in the Tribune and that has been stated by her own office. As you know, the FOP has requested a federal investigation into her conduct, and that, we believe, is already underway. But this is not just about Jussie Smollett. This is about many cases in the Cook County system that have gone unprosecuted or having charges reduced. The people standing around me can give you countless examples of how Ms. Fox's lack of prosecution has cost our members and police officers throughout this country an enormous amount of problems, not to mention the fact that people in the Cook County are depending on the prosecutor to put people in jail, to charge them accordingly. We can only go back just a little over a week when a Chicago police officer who was off duty, sitting in his car, was murdered. He was murdered because of a real hate crime. The person and persons that were involved in that case, one of them should have been in jail at the time he was murdered. But because the charges were reduced, he was out on the street to murder an off-duty Chicago police officer.
All right, so you heard the man, and whatever you think about the police, I'm certainly not a huge fan of the police, but I respect I respect people, whether they're police or not. I think I look at them as individuals. I certainly don't trust the police, though. But the point is that if you're the state attorney, the main prosecutor of a county, and the police literally have no confidence in you, you should probably resign, because people are gonna, there has to be a working relationship between the police force and the prosecutor's office. Otherwise, the system doesn't work at all. I mean, think about it. What are they supposed to do? How are they supposed to actually perform their jobs? The police can't prosecute the criminals. The prosecution office has to, and she certainly earned her reputation as just this, just a fraud. And I think she's going to have to resign. As for some of the remarks earlier, I saw D.I. Frater says they can no longer hold the bluff that the Midwest is solid blue when in fact Michigan was almost completely red, except for Wayne County, which is Detroit. Since 2016, it becomes even stronger red. I don't know. I mean, I think Frater, I think she said she's from Michigan. Look, I find that hard to believe because the state swung back to the Democrats in 2018 for the gubernatorial race and also for the Senate race. I think that there's a huge problem with people who consider themselves Trump supporters, MAGA supporters, and then when a crucial election comes around, like the 2018 elections, the midterms, they don't really show up. They just pretend that everything's going to be fine. And I think that comes from complacency. People have to realize that things that you like, if you like the policies that Donald Trump is performing, whether it's on the border or if it's in terms of repealing Obamacare, which for me, the most important thing was repealing Obamacare. If you like those things, you have to at least give the minimal level of support and go out and vote for the people you want during the primaries, or else you're kind of just yanking the chain of everybody around you by saying, oh, MAGA, whatever, I'm going to go to this rally. At a certain point, you have to go vote. And I think that there is some sort of, there's not a direct correlation between the people who claim to support Donald Trump and then the people who actually go out and vote for Donald Trump. I think that the key in 2020 will be telling people to go out to vote, because there's already all manner of ways that the people who are on the left, who are in the government, whether it's Democrats or there's also Republican people who are for a larger welfare state and for letting more legal immigrants come in. If you don't go out and do your minimum, then those people are going to remain in control, and you're not going to get any of it. So stop acting like a pussy. That's basically what I would say. Only governor the Democrats held the state legislature, and yes, I'm in Michigan. Yeah, I think if you're supporting Donald Trump in Michigan, you have to question the state parties. When I was at the event earlier with Brandon Tatum, which I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I was at an event there and I saw him. People were up in arms, and these were Republicans, and some of these were, another thing about that event, which was not that many people, but you had a number of black Republicans that showed up, and I didn't even know that there were Republicans in my county, but whether black or white, except for the one guy that showed up that I know from real life, who's been on the channel. He's a decent guy, but there's virtually no Republicans in my county. But there happened to be 3 black Republicans who live in my county there. And what was so funny was that they all dumped on the local Republican Party because they just don't care. They don't even try. They're using the same old tired methods of going to like bowling alleys and golf clubs and stuff like that. No, the majority of the people in this county are first of all, the majority is black, but even most of the white people who live here, they don't really go golfing, and they live on a more modest budget. And I would say what the Republicans would need to do is outreach to people, not just based on their race. They have black outreach people, which, do you want to do that? That's fine. But you have to do outreach to voters who are lower income and tell them, tell them essentially that their advocate in government if you're the Republican Party, their advocate in government will try to give them prosperity rather than just safety nets. The safety nets are there in case of crisis, but you don't want there to be a crisis. You want there to be prosperity and security. And when you have prosperity and security, you don't have to depend on the safety net so much. That's the message that I think that if you're a Republican, you should put out. I personally, I think that that's the message that that I believe in. And until a party does adopt it, I don't want to belong to one. I don't think the Republican Party is really trying, and I think it's really a disgrace what they do here in Ohio. Getting, they get elected. Everybody on the state level is a Republican here, except for Senator Brown. So he doesn't even dictate policy in Ohio. And yet the first thing they did when they came back into office this year was introduce a 10-cent gas tax. And my friend was talking, he was basically livid about it today. This guy who is a card-carrying Republican activist, he was livid about it. So yeah, it's definitely a leadership problem in the Republican Party, just as there is a leadership problem in the Democratic Party. That is, I think they have it worse. They have more divisions and they have more incoherence because of people like Ocasio-Cortez and people like Beto, who nobody knows what he really means. Anyway, I am getting a little tired and swamped, so I do have to go to work tomorrow. But thank you guys for tuning in late again. I think all you guys are, you know each other. Frater and Bobbity and Gerke. Gerke's, by the way, Larry Gerke's been a watcher of this channel for a pretty long time. Almost from the beginning. So, I want you guys to really help me when, some of these issues that I'm talking about, especially concerning John Mattis and the DNC, are kind of, they're the reason that I continue to put out content and continue to stay up late in order to make sure that, voters aren't shamed. They're given more options and they're given at least a vision of an alternative. I can't guarantee the alternative is going to happen, but, Bernie Sanders is an alternative to the status quo, or at least he was until he completely turned into a shill. Okay? Tim Ryan could be an alternative to the status quo. Okay? But if people get shamed, into voting for somebody based on who the media wants, that really is a disgrace to our democracy. So, or our republic, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, once again, please retweet this if you can. Whoops. Let's see here. And as usual, please like the video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. There's also a second channel, Razor Ray Special Cuts, where I periodically do videos. I'm going to try to do less directly political videos on there. Maybe I'll start doing a few more book reviews and things that are culture and sports related on there. BitChute, my channel is called Chef Leopard. On Minds.com, my wall is called Chef Leopard. And on Gab, it's at Starscream85. And I'll see you later. Yeah, Uncle Bobbity, definitely on Gab. I love using Gab. So thanks a lot. Good night.